OTAN, Outreach and Technical Assistance Network.
So why don't we get started officially? So Matthias, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, yes, thank you, Anthony. I worked with Anthony and previously with Penny Pearson, many of you know, on the distance learning update
report.
Now, if the TDLS, Renee, if the TDLS changes the D to digital, will the D in the distance learning update change? I'm wondering.
Right.
It might. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but that's cool. Good. Yes. So I work with every year with Anthony and previously with Penny on that report. We use a lot of the data from that CASAS collects from the adult agencies in the WIOA-funded agencies in California. And also we collect our own data through a survey that you might have seen early this year, and also the student technology intake survey is run by OTAN, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And is the teacher? No, that's not.
So yeah, there are two different surveys, the teacher tech skills survey and then the student tech skills survey. So we administer both of those.
Yep.
And kind of monitor that for adult ed agencies.
So we use that data to in that report more and more we compare in previous years to see what if there are any trends, how that compares. Other than that, I work I'm from Canada. I work for a not-for-profit out of Ottawa that works nationality in Canada called New Language Solutions, that produces in the immigrant language sector that has a LMS called avenue.ca. So if you're interested, you can just look up avenue.ca, and a teacher training program, and I do a lot of evaluation and research there around that program. And Anthony, thanks. Everybody knows.
So Anthony Burik, I'm one of the coordinators at OTAN, coordinator for distance learning projects. So again, one of the things that I focus on in my work with OTAN is this report, this annual report that we've been doing now, OTAN has been doing now for a number of years, distance learning and technology in California adult education. So that's been our focus now for the past few years. And again, our resources are here. They will be available after today. So if you want to come back and take a look at the slides and the work that we do in the class, in the session today, it will be available. So here's our agenda for our time together. So always good just to remind people about OTAN. Who's here for the first time ever at TDLS? Ben, I know a couple of people in the back, welcome. So just a reminder about OTAN, who we are. And then again, we'll talk a little bit kind of about the report itself. We also want to make sure folks know about the digital learning guidance. I know there was a session about that this morning. Some of you might have attended that session, but oh yeah, Christina was one of our presenters this morning. So she has more information to share with y'all. But we want to talk about the report that we've been doing for a number of years, plus the guidance, which is relatively new, and sort of how those two are starting to kind of come together. So we'll talk about that. Matthias mentioned we'll take a look at some of the data. And then we'll do some work together. You'll do some work independently for a few minutes, and then we'll come together and do some group work. And then again, as questions come up, if you have any questions, please ask us. And that's it. One thing I'll just say is, so this is it's a hybrid session. So by now you probably have sat in a couple of hybrid sessions. So let's just be mindful of our online folks. So if there's a lot of chatter in the room at the same time, they can't hear what's going on. So if we can just go one at a time, raise your hand if you need to. So we are respectful of the online folks. So just a reminder about OTAN. So in California, there are 3 state leadership projects for adult education. OTAN is one of them. We focus on technology training, but also CASAS is one of the projects, and also CalPro is the 3rd project. So we all work together to support adult education in California. So that's who we are. Everyone knows what OTAN is, right? Is anybody like brand new to OTAN?
He's new. He's
Brand
our
new.
newest person.
Okay, well, welcome.
Pablo.
Hi, Pablo. Welcome. Okay,
Welcome.
yeah. So we are one of, like I say, we are one of the state leadership projects supporting adult ed in California. So please come to our trainings, our webinars, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Okay. All the great things that we do here at OTAN. Okay, so Matthias, you want to get us going first on the report?
Yeah. Don't have to spend too much time on it. There is also there is some notes in there, a little bit more detail if you're interested in the slide deck. So the technology distance learning update, it's been going on for quite some time. Always different, and you can see those previous ones on the report section on otan.us. It's always in the, has it always been in the appendix F? It is so, right? Always
For a while now,
appendix
yeah.
F. Yeah, F. And there's different sections in there over the different years. Technology integration, teacher tech skills, self-assessment, learner tech use. More recently, also stuff on digital equity, the way students access technology, what kind of technology they have, if they have to share devices, things like that, things that have come up, especially have been of importance during the pandemic, or on the mind of many people during the pandemic. The data comes from the National Reporting System, the AFLA program, implementation survey, CIP, that's the continuous improvement, continuous improvement plan, thank you. Teacher self-assessment and the student technology intake survey that OTAN's run. In a couple of years ago, so that produces a lot of quantitative data. And a couple of years ago, we've made a concerted effort to add more qualitative data to it, and more of the voice of the field as well. And we first did that with focus groups, so very speaking more targetedly with programs just after pandemic, because there was lots to talk about, and we didn't feel like if we're just asking people in a survey that would come out kind of thing. Since then, the last couple of years, we've done it through a survey with a lot of open-ended questions, because also we wanted to cast the net wider and not just zero in on just a few programs. So there's a lot of people who spend quite a bit of time, giving us their feedback. Yeah, so that's the last point there. The OTAN survey, usually at the beginning of January, that adds quite a lot of depth to the end. So the data that you will see, or that you see in every report, is the program year. And now we'll be talking about the last program year, so 22 to 23, which ended on the end of June 2022. It takes a while for CASAS to usually CASAS gets the data out, right? Like in November, something like that.
Usually
November,
the start of
December,
December.
when they start presenting on it and then starting releasing it so we can actually use it. And then we usually turn it over sometime in the spring, then the report comes out and is publicly available.
Yeah, and just on that point, so sometimes people say there's a bit of a lag in the data, right? Because it's the 22, we're looking back at the 22-23 year, and right now it's the start of 2024. So the gap, the time gap is kind of widening. But one of the things that we're trying to do in this year's report is actually put in a couple of years of data. So not just 22-23, but in some cases, if we can refer back to the previous year as well. So we're interested in trends, kind of what the data is telling us in terms of maybe future directions, things like that. So that's kind of a new feature for this year's report.
And what's then also important is sometimes you get that through open-ended questions, but a lot in discussion with people. Like, what do those trends mean? You can see sometimes trends in the data, but it's really people on the ground who can maybe give us some idea of, oh, why is that actually happening, right? And what is actually the trend there?
I wanted to say, because like I work on the SIP as a region and as my institution, so we can try to do it the best way we can. One of the things that is problematic with this survey that might not have been like 3 years ago is Carolyn asked us to do it when the students enter. So that means if I'm trying to create SMART goals, I'm assessing students that entered at this point in time. One thing, they're not the same students as this point in time. And two, I can't have any impact on what they come to me with. It almost seems like maybe we do this after 40 hours or something. I don't know. So that we're measuring apples for apples. That's the only thing I see, because I want to have real goals. I want to be able to show improvement. And that is the thing I'm struggling with. I don't know if it's OTAN I talked to, or the state, or CDE, but if we did it after a little time, then, I could implement North Star and they would have, I don't know.
And just to make sure, that's a very good point, but just to make sure it's understood, we're not assessing, like, we just get the data aggregated for all programs. We're not looking at programs specifically or making any decisions, assumption, or whatever, any program evaluation or anything like that. We don't know. It's all aggregated together, what we see, right? What CASA sees, I don't know.
Well,
and how they deal with the data, I don't know.
Improvement plan, they're asking us to
Exactly.
look at this data and make improvements on our program, which we want to do.
Exactly.
I'm not.
That's difficult,
I'm
and
very
they want to have the
interested
data
in that reason.
and they want to have the data at a certain point in time, and that probably mandates more when they ask you for it, rather than what makes sense on the ground.
Correct.
Yeah, we try to be coldly objective with the reporting, but we realize that, we want it also to be actionable and serviceable, right? And so it's important to point those challenges out. So, okay, so let's move on here. So hopefully everybody by now is familiar with this document, the California Adult Education Digital Learning Guidance. And so this came out officially in the fall of 2021. So it's been around for a couple of years. We have the guidance and some new resources hosted on the OTAN website. So one of the things about this guidance document is that it's really meant for California adult education agencies to think about all of the different components of adult education, right? In a wide variety of topic areas. But it's really thinking about how do we create, in the field, how do we create really optimal digital learning experiences for our learners, whether, no matter where the agency is in California. So again, this document has been around for a while, for a couple of years now. And, last year it occurred to us that, there are a lot of topics that are mentioned in the guidance document. Some of those topics are what we're collecting data on in these various locations with the CASAS data or the OTAN data. So what are the connections between the topics that are listed in the guidance and the data that might inform some of those topics? So we're still kind of exploring, we're still thinking about it. We took a stab at some of these points last year in last year's report, and we're going to continue in that vein for this year. But with the guidance document itself, let me just check the chat. Sorry for 1 second here. Okay, so Diana said, just make sure to repeat or summarize the questions. Okay. If I heard her, she should access her student survey results during the same year. So I think it's probably, Adele, do you want to just speak to that again, your point about the...
So in the SIP, it's asking us to have a technology goal, but it also says create a technology goal using the survey. So if I'm trying to do a SMART goal, and the SMART goal is for next year, based on the input from this year, But the next year students, I haven't provided any service to,
Hmm.
because I'm giving it to them upon interest. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to make a measurable specific goal for those students, you know what I mean? Because I can't give them a class before they become my student.
Right, so, okay, so again, just thinking about like, so the data that we present in the report ultimately to the field, how useful is it gonna be if we're thinking about either kind of a reflection on what's really happening now, and then future planning or thinking about particular SMART goals or particular technology goals?
I mean, I get that I can look at this, my students need this, I provide it, but how do I measure that I provided that?
Mhm.
If I'm testing them upon entry rather than after 40.
Got it, okay, all right, so some things to think about,
Absolutely.
okay. Okay, so then thanks, Diana. Okay, so let's go back to the guidance for a second. So again, if you're not familiar with the guidance, it's broken down into an introduction, and then this is really the core of the guidance, these 6 chapters. So ensuring equity and access, foundations of adult ed and digital learning, flexible learning experiences, models that work, data-driven instruction and assessments, and then healthy, equitable, and inclusive digital communities. And I bolded 2, 3, and 5 in particular, because when you kind of dive into those 3 chapters, we talk about, in chapter 2 of the guidance, we talk about devices, we talk about connectivity, we talk about digital literacy skills, which are certainly things that we're looking at in the various pieces of data that we're collecting. In the foundations chapter, which talks a lot about professional development, teacher professional development. Again, that teacher tech skills survey is all about PD. And then in chapter 5, adopting models at work, we talk about distance ed, blended learning, and high flex and other modalities, and we certainly collect data on that as well. So again, we're looking at these chapters in particular as sort of the connection, the intersection between the data that we're collecting and specific topics that are mentioned, and sort of can one inform the other? How can we sort of learn about both of those things together with more study of the topics, as well as the data that might give us some insight into those particular topics? So before we continue by looking at the data, any questions so far about the data that we're collecting, the guidance, any initial questions that folks have, or online as well? Great. Okay, Matthias, you want to
Sure, thanks, Anthony.
continue here?
So that's a multi-year graph there on regular classroom enrollment and distance learning enrollment of the data comes from NRS tables 4 and 4C, which are publicly available if you Google them. Yeah, it's, I guess, was what I'm saying, interesting how the regular classroom attendance obviously in 2020, 2021 was a lot lower, and the online learning, distance learning, online learning enrollments went up, and it's now diverging again post-pandemic. So that kind of shows that. The next table on the next slide, that's the same thing. So what's interesting here, at least to us, we were talking about it earlier today and yesterday, what we've noticed is also the decline of distance learning, online learning participants between the last 2 program years that we have data on. The decline from, I think, from 2021 to 2022, after a lot of programs went back to in-person teaching in, sorry, now I gotta get this right? September of 21. Yes. And then of course the regular classroom, in-person classroom attendance went up again. So that's something we can discuss a little bit later, what you think what happened or what is happening at the moment in terms of where programs are going in terms of offering online blended for in-person only. The service always asks, what is your this is in the student technology intake survey. What is your feeling about learning online? I think what's interesting here too is that when they can choose, I will continue to learn online in between the last program year, the year before the last program year, 21-22. It's declining. Whereas also we know anecdotally that a lot of students want to keep learning online. So that's also interesting too. And that might jive with what you hear from your learners, or it may not at all. So we can talk about that too.
There's a quick question.
Yeah.
And I know our school has done a survey, but I don't remember how many languages we talked about.
How many?
Languages.
The student survey?
Yes.
So it's offered in English, but I believe on the survey form, there's a translator, Google Translate tool. So I believe the agencies can make it available in other languages as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, what was it about it? One year it was mandated, right? The intake, and now it's not anymore? Or
No,
something
the
like that?
student survey actually
It
is,
still
it
is?
should be administered to all students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no change from CDE on
Okay,
that.
it was the.
It's the teacher survey, which
Sorry, yes.
was optional, and it's still kind of optional, but we would really love for teachers to complete the
Yes,
survey.
okay.
And actually at OTAN and CDE, we are in the process of, we're in the process of revising that teacher tech skills survey. I'm not sure if it's going to be ready in the next program year or not. So wait and see on that, but yes.
The student survey is supposed to be done once a year or twice a year, or at the beginning of the semester, or when is it?
Upon intake.
Yeah, so so the student survey is available, it's open all year. So whenever the students enter the agency, or soon after, well, this is the issue that Adele is raising is, after how many hours instruction should we do it, but really it should be done at intake or soon after. So.
Can we see our individual agencies results?
I don't know, but I would assume that not from us.
Other than that.
We don't have,
Yeah.
we don't have that. It's all aggregated. We don't get that. But CASAS obviously has it, so I don't know.
So
It's on the OTAN website. If you have access to the portal for your WIOA, you go under WIOA, click on the box to the left, and it will show you your aggregate data. It's hard to dig through. That's what we were discussing,
Yeah.
but it is there.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and you can always check with your CDE consultant on that.
And if you're not WIOA, you can still get it by contacting support.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Renee.
So, okay, so just a couple of comments, again, a question about when to administer it, and then Darla said, we try to have students do it during the first meeting, during an independent study initial meeting, so that I will continue to learn online is automatic. Yes.
Yes.
Right, so we know.
Yeah.
Oh, Renee, sorry.
Well, I look at this question and I wonder if students feel like they have a choice.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was.
So for example, if, I'm sorry, can you go back?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I will continue to learn online. If they know that they're not going to be taking an online class and if their only choice is to be in person, well, then they're probably going to say no, right? And then I don't think I can learn online right now. They probably don't think that they can learn, or it's maybe not an option. And so I wonder if we're creating barriers
Mhm.
where we don't need to be creating barriers.
Right.
It's a good point. It feels more like almost like an exit or a benchmark question, right? If you're.
So so in our folder, we have a bunch of worksheets. So those kinds of comments are fantastic comments to add
Yes.
to the worksheets. So keep that, Renee, keep that in mind. And Adele, keep your comment in mind too. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll just say, all of these surveys, they probably all can always be better. So, but it's helpful to hear from the field to sort of, what are the issues that you're coming up against, and to get that data, bring it back to CDE, have those discussions about whether these surveys need to be revised in any way. So, like I say, the teachers, we just revised the student tech skills survey recently within the last couple of years. we're looking at the teacher skills survey right now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
So, and yeah, so it also collects data on digital access and equity. Thanks, Anthony, for fixing my typo there. It was not a wiki in community, it was Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yes.
But wiki and community would be good too, right? Thanks. So yeah, here too, again, we're comparing over the last 2 program years. Wi-Fi at home declined a little bit, which is also a little bit surprising, since we always hear that people are getting better and better connected every year, right?
And all this money is coming, right? For all the federal money is coming for better connectivity, more access to devices. So this should, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
what's happening there, right? Cell phone use is up, okay. That's interesting. The Wi-Fi in the community, okay, so community, there's more access to that. And personal hotspots.
So I have a comment about that.
Yeah,
I see a lot of money being, I'm in a rural area.
Yeah.
With a
okay,
crap ton of granite. So I see a lot of money going to the areas like, if you went to some of the areas of Apple Valley, they may be having access to 3 or 4 different devices that they can get from public entities. Whether or not they have Wi-Fi. And the same problem for the digital divide is actually just making more of a divide, because in Lucerne, which is a tiny little community, they still have no Wi-Fi except for the grocery store and the schools. That has not changed
Yeah.
since 2019.
Yeah.
Despite all the money that we put at it, if we're just buying things that are band-aids and we're not building more
Yeah.
infrastructure, which there has to be a reason for the companies to build those towers.
Yeah.
And we're trying to say, hey, we're a really good place to shoot Beyonce films. Can someone help us out?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and then
That's to be that is what I see as the problem, because we're serving the people in the community that have the least resources. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, they're going to be prone to be in those places.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's
Absolutely,
yeah, so all 50 states plus territories that are, have been submitting their state digital equity plans in anticipation of these federal dollars that are coming in the next few years. So hopefully, there's enough commentary about those kinds of situations, Adele. And it's not just in rural communities. We know even in urban communities, there are gaps, right? But sometimes they're more pronounced in rural communities, right? So hopefully enough of that commentary has made its way into the state plan that California will submit to the federal government, and that money will match, those needs. And hopefully, within the next year or two, the state will start closing some of those gaps. So we'll keep looking at it from a data point of view, but on the ground, you all know the issues that you're running into in your communities and whether or not they're going to be fixed or not. So yeah.
Absolutely. Then students are asked, which device do you or can you use for online learning? Cell phones, less laptops and computers, less tablets, but more and more, increasingly people don't have a device at all, which is also, you would expect the opposite, hopefully the opposite trend. What's going on there?
Right.
I have a theory on that too. I mean, from my client.
You want to write the report, Adele?
Well, the thing is, if you train people that if they say they don't have a device, they're gonna get a device, they know they can hawk that device, they're likely to say they don't have a device. I'm just saying.
Okay. Absolutely. Device sharing, data limits, quiet place to study. If they've taken an online learning class before, we've worked quite a little bit in that table here in the report that's for a separate table. But just to show you a little bit of that. Still like a third of them are sharing with others at home. I think that's something to keep in mind. Data limits that limit learning. So if more and more people are using cell phones, that's definitely an issue. If they can't get on Wi-Fi, a quiet place to study. Okay, at least 8 out of 10 do have that, but still that still leaves 2 out of 10 who don't. And students who've taken an online class before, declining. Also a little bit surprising.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we can all get on the soapbox about this one.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's, you know, so much attention during COVID spent on this divide, right? And if nobody can in person go anywhere, and the only way to connect with services and people is online, I mean, it seems to me that we learned that lesson, and yet the data now is telling us that maybe people are not. There seems to be some backsliding going on, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, remains to be seen, but yeah.
Things that would help you to study online, flexibility is a huge thing in terms of times, other flexibility too, obviously. A device, there's more than a quarter of them. Help with online textbooks or online classes, also a quarter. Technical help is still a big issue, and help to get on the internet, for example, mobile hotspot, also quite a bit, but it's holding steady. All those from one program year to the next. And then, for example, and this is from the teacher assessment, we ask, or the surveys ask teachers, as you probably know, what they feel they have weak proficiency in, or adequate proficiency or strong proficiency, and if that area is of low, medium, or high importance to them. I'm sure you could give you just a second to read. Using technology to differentiate instruction, for example, as a quite high, but the highest there, where are we, 69.8, troubleshooting.
I think one of the things in previous reports, we've focused on kind of the difference between that sort of group of folks who feel like they're weak in their proficiency, depending on whatever the technology skills is, and versus how important they gauge.
Do you want to change the slide? And
yeah,
I think that's on the next one.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to just stay on the
yes.
slide for 1 second, just to say that, you know, this proficiency this adequate proficiency, like, you know, just the average teacher says, yeah, I can troubleshoot, right? And so I feel like sometimes when you ask that questions, like never, sometimes, always, that sometimes is quite wide. You know, so is it the low end of sometimes, or is it the high end of sometimes? And I kind of feel like, in a way, maybe this middle column here on the adequate, is it the low end of adequate, or is it the high end of adequate, right? And so, I mean, I think that in this day and age, we would like really most of, you know, the vast majority of people to be strong, to have a strong proficiency with a variety of technology skills. So I know that we've kind of focused on the extremes in previous years, and so maybe we'll take another look at that. But, you know, I kind of wonder, really, for me, the divide is right here between either feels weak or just kind of maybe okay, you know, and think about it from the student point of view too, right? Do I want my teacher to be able to solve my problem or not solve my problem? You know, I want my teacher to be able to solve my problem if they can, or the adult educator or the staff member or whoever it is at the agency. And if it's sort of a 50-50 crapshoot, that might be problematic, right? We might want to think about building up the educator proficiency, you know, across the board in a variety of skills. So,
absolutely,
because everybody has been saying for a number of years now, like, all of these things are really important, right? And probably more so within the last few years. So, So why don't we skip this one?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of covered it.
Okay. Then we're kind of running out of time, and I think where there's good. And then, you know, we were starting to think actually today and yesterday.
This morning, mere hours ago.
About
at TDLS.
What about, we gotta say something. We gotta say something about AI here. Okay. So we're starting to consider using AI in assisting with data analysis, especially when we're asking. It takes a huge amount of time and the turnover when we get the data. By the time we get the data and to get the report out to all the open, and we want to do justice to all the open-ended responses, to turn that over. So there's ways to use AI and not lose, to better capture the voice of the adult education field, but not lose that, of course, the human eyes on that data. We don't want to do that. What are other ways? We're wondering what are other ways to use AI for the production of this and other reports at the agency, districts, region, or consortium level. And of course, yeah, we want to try to keep in mind what the ethical and other implications are when we use AI to assist with data analysis and reporting.
Yeah. So we don't want, well, I don't think we want the AI to write the report.
No.
We're not saying that. We're thinking about, but how do we start leveraging AI when it comes to all of this data? And not just us, I mean, all of you back at your agencies, like the mountains of data that you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Are there ways that we can use or start to use AI to get a better handle or provide maybe more objective analysis of the data that we have? So that's what we're starting to think about.
Yeah.
But again, the ethical issues that you mentioned. So yeah, I mean, it's
a whole new world.
It is a whole new world. Okay.
All right, yes, we still have 20 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so before we head into the activity, any questions or ideas, comments? Take a look at the online folks as well. I think we're okay.
So yeah, so we have 3 topics here that we looked a little bit of data on and stuff like that, and the 3 worksheets that are in the resource folder.
Yeah.
Right. So we wanted to give you a little bit of time, maybe what do you have? We have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe about 5 minutes just to think about one of the topics, and then we can group together. You can group together with the people who chose the same topic, and then maybe just share a little bit what you've been thinking about.
Yeah. So if you're back in the folder, so again, we have 3. So let's just take a look at the topic 1 worksheet here.
Mhm.
So
And of course, yeah, if you can record some of those things, that'll be super for us.
Yeah.
To know what you noticed and what you're wondering about.
yeah. And so the notice really is, when you look at the tables that Matthias has provided, already Adele and Renee and some of you have already sort of started noticing things about the data. So we would love to get some of those ideas here. And then also the wonder as well. So when you look at the data, what are the questions that come up for you? What are the things that you think are not addressed or are missing? Adele was talking about her particular issue about when we administer these surveys, when we get the data back, and then sort of how do we sort of look at that data, as a whole, knowing that it's captured at various points in a year, for example, with different audiences.
And we'll leave the forum open for
Yeah.
a little while. So if you want to put in notes after the session, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And then the wonder
limited
too,
time.
yeah, the wonder too could also be, we're starting to think about AI. You all may be thinking about AI back at your agencies for reporting purposes. So we'd love to hear about what some of your ideas are as well, how we might use AI for some of these things. So we have 3 different, good. So someone's already working in the doc. Let's come back together as a group. We have about 9-10 minutes or so left. So before we hear from you, so Matthias and I, we're actually working on the report itself right now, the full report. So we hope, fingers crossed, that, because again, as Matthias mentioned, some of the data came in late, and so we're catching up and all that. So we hope to have the report out. So this is start of March. So we hope to look at sort of a draft version by the end of this month, and then hopefully by April, we'll have kind of the full version. And so as soon as we can get that out to the field, we'll let you know. It will have a much fuller sections on the access and equity, the teacher tech skills survey, and then some of the data that has come from CASAS plus the January survey that we administered to kind of get more information about some of those initial CASAS questions as well. So that's kind of the timeline that we're working on at the moment, but we hope to get that out soon. So we thought we would just want to hear about some of the things that came up in your groups. We can start by looking at the first. Let me just check the chat here. Okay. Let's go to the first document, first topic, topic 1, the equity and access. Seems like most people kind of focused on this. Let's just start. Is there anyone online who wanted to share anything that you commented on with the equity and access? And the online folks, you can come on mic if you would like. Diana, do you want to?
Sure, I'll go ahead. I was waiting, giving that pause for someone else to have a chance. I put in that I'm just curious about if the surveys are really distributed to the majority of participants. I'm talking about both staff and students. Or is there a possibility that in some schools, they only give the survey to the advanced level students or the high set, or I should say HSE students? Or is it even across, all the students? And same thing with staff. Do the tech savvy teachers go in and fill it out, and the ones that, kind of shy away from it, postpone it as long as they can, or maybe don't even participate?
Okay, good questions,
Yeah.
Diana.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you.
question.
Yeah. So how, right, how equitable, or maybe equal,
Yeah.
but also equitable too, are
And
the survey
Anthony,
district.
I think I've said that for a long time now.
Yeah,
Nothing's
it's
changed.
good, and it's good for other people to hear that as well, Diana. So yes, thank you. Okay, what about other folks in the room? Anything that kind of came up with you with the equity and access issues, that the data, when you looked at the data?
I just put that, well, we were talking about this, so more companies right now are bringing employees back in. Like, I know there were several companies where December was kind of a cutoff and they brought them back in. So I think more and more, there's less people working from home. So just, is it no longer worth the cost to pay for Wi-Fi at home if you're not really working at home anymore? And if you notice, using places in the community has gone up. So if they are working remote, or if they're, working some sort of hybrid schedule, maybe they're going in the community and not paying for it at home. And that kind of is consistent with some of the other data, like other devices have gone down, except for phone, which they probably have Wi-Fi on their phone, but sometimes don't include a hotspot.
Okay. So maybe, so kind of paraphrase, so things that are happening in the larger world of work, maybe showing up in the data. Yeah, in that way. That's good. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Yeah, Adele.
In the past, and it might have just been these last 2 years or 1 year, I don't really recall, but we used to send these, I used to send these surveys out like I do my principal survey, because I do a principal survey every month too, to annoy my students. But every month, look my principal's letter. Yep. I only make it 4 questions though, and I try to use it for program development and stuff, so they see that something's happening. But I sent that out after the first, time. And I think 2 things happened. One, they knew what options were available because they were already students. I kind of wonder if you're coming in the door the first time, your language is limited, even though I have someone that probably speaks your primary language. How much does language barrier impact their understanding of that survey, number 1? And number 2, how much does them worrying about, oh, if I say I want in person or online, is it gonna impact me being able to get into something, because they just don't know enough about my agency to know that either answer is okay. I think those things, those variables will impact the student's answers. Because I was trying to sort through that with another agency, and it was weird because we're like, what, 7 miles apart maybe? And she had like only 20% wanted online. And then on my agency, 80% would like to have that option. And it's just, I think it's a matter of, I truly think it's a matter of them worrying that if they put one thing that might limit their access to being able to get into. their perspective.
Mhm. Okay,
Thank you.
other equity access issues? Yeah,
So is that pandemic fatigue where people are just tired of being isolated at home and they want that feeling of just interacting with another human being? Might be a reason why they would say no to the online and more willing to go into a space, particularly if that space offers other things to support them. So that might be a reason why some of the data also reflects a greater desire to be face-to-face as opposed to online.
mhm,
Personal collection, personal connection and mood style, like workshop style, orientation style.
mhm,
That way you can use check boxes, like, once you ask the question verbally,
mhm,
and you can collect that by looking at the eye.
mm,
It's easier.
okay, yeah. Okay, great.
Great, thank you.
So I don't think we got as many comments in the teacher doc. We got a few. Does anybody want to, just maybe one commenter about the teacher skills survey or the teacher PD? Anyone want to share either online or in the room?
Hello, this is Darla.
Hey, Darla.
Hi, Dollar.
Hi. So I totally agreed with your idea that like we often will choose the middle, trying to not claim to be strong if we're feeling pretty strong, but we're not quite there. But I was also thinking of the other end of many of our agencies have just one person who brings so much to the overall program, but technology is just not theirs in terms of a skill set really. And so I think when we have them take the survey, even though it's fully anonymous, we just always see the results and kind of know that it's not all that anonymous once it comes out. But I am from a smaller organization too, so I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. In the smaller agencies, not many places to hide, right, Darla?
Sure, absolutely. We tend to know each other better, yes.
Got it. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. And then how about in the distance, blended learning distance, maybe just a comment. If someone wanted to share something they talked about in their group. Online or in person.
Oh, great, somebody's still writing.
And one little thing.
Yeah.
We both have high school diploma kids.
Okay.
I mean, we are trying to give them their diploma. They're self-paced at their homes if they are. And that even, like she said, they have the access. They're 24/7 on the phone. But that darn Google form is not answered ever. Like, that is the new generation also like ignoring the stuff. Not even like, third world country coming here to the US, this is a new thing for them. No, they were born here. They know the system. They know Google form is the way. We know it. Everybody, just 10 little questions. Can you please say yes, no, yes, no? Nope. They are resisting. I don't know why. How can we reach them? Right? Those people are just kind of choose to be hidden like that. That's it. We know the questions are about their, high school diploma goal. When are you graduating? And then how much willing to give us program like in 2 hours a week or something? No, they're just ignorant. Like, no, that's like teenager style. Okay, you just yell at them. Dinner is ready. Nobody's coming.
Right.
That's it. That is another piece that we're dealing with personally.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, using the technology to really make things very open and accessible, and yet, you as you say, you're facing this kind of resistance, right? Or maybe I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm not really going to make full use of it, but you want to have a very robust, potentially a very robust blended program or high flex program or hybrid program. And yet, where is the buy-in, right? Yeah. Okay, so I know that we're at time. So thank you for these comments. Matthias and I will take a look at these. This is really great
Absolutely.
feedback just to hear. Also, as we're kind of getting the report together in its final paces here. So again, thank you for that. So I think that we'll basically go ahead and fill out the evaluation. But like I said, Matthias. Matthias and I are working on the report right now. Like I say, we hope to get it out, soon, within the next month or so. Again, we appreciate all of you taking the time to read it, take a look at it. If you have questions or other ideas, and again, to Adele's point earlier, hopefully this report and other reports like it are really helpful for you at your agencies. That's one of the goals as well, is that you can actually make use of it, for your planning purposes, your SIP goals, whatever other goals that you're working on at the agency. So I think, Matthias, anything to close with? Or?
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.